The year is 2009, and the only console that I have available to me is the Nintendo Wii. At this point in time, I played through most of the titles that I was interested in that particular platform, and I'm looking for something new. So I started looking up into this game called Muramasa the Demon Blade, which is going to be releasing shortly. And I didn't really know what I was going to get myself into, but the game looked interesting, so I caved in and I bought it. I bought it and I started playing it, and I was completely blown away because not only I enjoyed the story quite a bit, it also had this beautiful and unique art style, as well as the animation that came with that specific art style, this mix match of genres between 2D, side-scrolling, as well as hack and slash, light RPG, light platforming. It was just a very interesting game and unlike anything that I had really played before. And so I was very much taken aback, and that was the first Vanillaware game that I ever played. So this game actually got remastered for the PlayStation Vita, in case you guys are curious, but that is the only platform it's been remastered to. There's also a bunch of new episodes that were not available at the time, new story characters that you can play on the Vita version. However, let's just fast forward to 2013, and there's another game by Vanillaware that I'm also very interested that came out, and the name of that game was Dragon's Crown. And naturally, I really was interested in it because of, again, that unique art style that they bring to the game. But this time around, they were also going for almost this Dungeons and Dragons-like storytelling, which made me even more interested in it. And it had this wide array of characters that you could play as, and one of them was a dual-wielding hammer dwarf that could also pick up boulders and even its enemies and beat the crap out of other enemies with whatever he happened to pick up, and that was very satisfying. So I did a full playthrough of that game, which is available in the channel if you guys want to go and check out that stuff. That was during the PlayStation 3 days. And as a matter of fact, Dragon's Crown was my favorite game that I played in 2013, which was surprising because I would never think that, a 2D game with that specific art style would ever be a game that could potentially be the best game that I would play in a given year. But just the levels of polish and all of the gameplay that you can do in Dragon's Crown really cemented that as my favorite release of that year. Now you fast forward again to 2018, and on the 15th of May, we are going to be getting a remastered version of that particular game, which is called Dragon's Crown Pro. So naturally, as you guys can imagine, I was very interested in checking it out again, and it's essentially the same game that we had. Naturally, it just runs on a PlayStation 4. Now, they're also touting stuff like, oh, it's got 4K, 60 FPS, and all of these other things, and to be completely honest, the game's art style is going to look good no matter on what resolution you play it. So, looks gorgeous on 4K, looks just as gorgeous on 1080p, at least in my opinion. I personally can't see that much difference. Then again, we need to remind ourselves that my 4K television that I purchased was the cheapest one that I could get. So maybe some further high-end 4K TV can get a better experience. But ultimately, what I'm trying to say is it doesn't matter if you play it on a PlayStation 4 Pro or on a regular PlayStation 4 or even on the PlayStation 3 or on the PlayStation Vita. It doesn't really matter where you play this game because it looks friggin' gorgeous no matter what. Although it did have a couple of frame dips on the Vita. I remember it that much because I played both the Vita version as well as the PlayStation 3 version, which both I enjoyed immensely, if I'm going to be completely honest. Now, an interesting thing about Dragon's Crown that I was not aware is because I just figured, it's a remaster for PlayStation 4, so they're probably not going to carry over your save. And so it was the first thing that I checked out because you had this system that you could upload saves for Dragon's Crown up to the cloud, and you could then download it on your PlayStation Vita. It was the way that you synced your saves between the PlayStation Vita and the PlayStation 3. And it turns out that pretty much everything just works out of the box. So I loaded up Dragon's Crown, and I just downloaded my save, and all of my characters were there. All of my two characters. I only really played as a dwarf and the male magician. I don't remember if it was a mage. I think the class was a mage. And naturally, I had no idea how to play the game because it's actually a fairly complex game for those of you that are not aware. I mean, you're probably seeing some gameplay in the background. It looks pretty basic. It looks like a beat them up with some RPG elements, but trust me, it is so much more than that. There is so much depth to the gameplay of this game that it is insane. And this is just a game that I really wanted to talk to you guys about because I think that a lot of people might have missed out on this game. Maybe you guys thought that it was a little bit impenetrable, or maybe you thought it wasn't for you. and I cannot recommend this particular title enough. So, in case you guys are wondering what the type of game this is, like, think Golden Axe, like all the way back to Golden Axe, if you've ever played that, or Streets of Rage, maybe that's a little bit more familiar, or if you guys don't know, it's the same genre as Double Dragon. It's the beat 'em up genre in its essence. So you go into a level, you beat up all of the bad guys, and at the end, you have a boss fight. Now, what is different about Dragon's Crown is that on top of that, it also has a loot system, a random loot system, by the way, very much the same way that you would have a loot system for, say, Diablo. So it actually reminds me a lot of Diablo, the loot that you get in this particular game. And the way that it works is that you are going through a level and you find all of these chests. So you ask your rogue friend, which you have access to by moving the right stick. There's a cursor that shows up. You guys will see that cursor in the gameplay. And moving that right stick, you can like hover over chests and you can ask your rogue friend to go and open. So you have a rogue friend that is always with you, and he opens chests and doors and stuff for you in secret passages. You still have to find the secret passages yourself, but then you tell the rogue to go there and open that stuff. And as the rogue opens these chests, you get these treasures, and each treasure is going to have a rating. The better the rating, the better the treasure is going to be for your current level, because you also level up and you got skills and all these other things. But as you can see, there's like a big, heavy RPG element mixed up with this beat them up playstyle that you have in Dragon's Crown. But there's so much more to it than that, because on top of that, as you go through these different levels, you're going to be given options. Like, you'll get to a certain point in the level, and like this encounter takes place where you will see like some kind of a scenario, like, oh, you've been spotted by this goblin chef or something, and you can pretend that you're one of the rookie recruits, and you can be sent to the front line or something like that. Or you can sneak out of the kitchen and go through a different path. And these choices that you make, they're going to lead you to different bosses. Different bosses will have different powers, and they will drop different loot. And it's just, it's overwhelming, basically, to try and describe all of the things that this game does, because you have so many classes, and mastering each of the classes, it's like its own little minigame. Like, the fact that I know how to play with the dwarf just means that I don't actually know how to play with any of the other classes. Like, you're seeing me play with the knight character here. I actually don't know if it's called a fighter. Sorry, the fighter character. And the reason I was playing with the fighter character is because I played a big chunk of this game as a dwarf, so I figured I would check out the fighter this time around. And you guys will notice that I'm slacking. I'm not playing all that well, because it's what I'm telling you. My brain, when I play Dragon's Crown, is just formatted for that dwarven action. And when you get a different character, it is so different that you literally have to take a completely different approach to the game. But at the same time, the inputs and the controls, they're not super hard to master. The mastering of this game is you mastering the character itself, because each character's playstyle is so different. And as you guys can see, the game is going to support up to 4-player co-op. And another thing that I was very surprised to realize is that not only it supports up to 4-player co-op locally if you want to. So if you got 4 controllers, you can play with 4 other friends. The problem with that is that all of their characters are going to be in your save file. Or if you actually want to play online with friends, you can also do that, and each of you can have your own save files that you can then play by yourself and take your character back into your friend's game or something like that. And the cool thing that they've done with Dragon's Crown Pro is that not only you can get your save file from your previous game, so your PlayStation 3 or PlayStation Vita save file, but you can also cross-play with the PlayStation Vita and with the PlayStation 3, which is really, really cool of them to enable that particular feature. At least in my opinion, I think that's friggin' fantastic. 2 things that I really did not expect. So, basically in terms of a game, I've already mentioned in the past that this is a fantastic game. I've kind of explained to you guys what the base premise of the game is. It is a very satisfying game to play. In my opinion, you're going to have a whole lot of fun. The story itself is also pretty cool, but on top of the story, this actually has this very elaborate endgame where you go through all these levels in the first portion of the story, and then you have to go through the levels, but they're going to mix up the enemies that are going to show up in the levels. They're going to mix up some of the encounters that you're going to be having, some of the boss fights that you're going to be experiencing at the end of the levels. And then you're going to be collecting these orbs, which will then unlock one major final boss that you're going to be able to engage with. And after that, you can basically do it all over again in New Game Plus. So you're constantly getting better loot for your character, and you're constantly leveling up your character. You're putting in more and more skills and further developing this character that you've spent so much time playing, because the game will actually take quite a few hours to beat. I think it took me like 30 hours to beat the game on the first time, but I'm not exactly sure if it was 30 hours or not. So as you can see, lots of content. This is one character, okay? If you're talking about all of the characters, and if you want to try out all of the characters, there is going to be plenty more than that. So lots of content, beautiful art style, a story that I enjoyed, some D&D storytelling, which there's even a narrator that will narrate all of these events that take place as you go through these different dungeons. And it's just a super satisfying game to play, and I cannot recommend it enough. And I know that I kind of feel like I'm just recommending it over and over, but it was just such a good game when I played it that I cannot bear the idea of people passing it by, you know? So hopefully you guys will check it out. Let me know what you guys think about Dragon's Crown Pro. Thank you very much for watching. Remember, if you enjoy my content, subscribe, hit the bell icon for notifications, all that stuff. And I'll see you guys in the next one.